What's happening? It's your boy, Glennlawrence, and I'm back with another episode of the Blerd Dad Podcast. You see that pregnant pause? That's me trying to recognize the silence and stay grounded in it. And it's been working for me. I've been using it because I tell you what, this kid he's trying the patience. But yeah, it's a weird way to open the show, just complaining, just right off the top. Anyways, welcome to the Blerd Dad Podcast, a space where we like to have unfiltered conversations and nerd out about parenthood. Of course, I am your host, Glenn Lawrence, and we are back with another amazing episode. We have an awesome guest tonight for you. His name is Phil Mike, and we're going to have so much fun with him. But before we do that, let me just give a shout out to our sponsors real quick. We always got to do that because they help us keep the lights on. Amongst other things, it's theymademewearit. You know it, theymademewearit. They are a husband and wife team, and they are on a mission to get your pet laced up in the finest fashions and help them discover their stylish side. Whether it's a awesome Halloween costume, some comfy jammies, an adorable dress, or a custom designer gown, your fur baby will love wearing the latest fashions. When you're shopping in the store, you're also going to be contributing Hope for Paws. It's an animal rescue organization working tirelessly to rescue and save the lives of abandoned animals. So what are you waiting for? Please contact theymademewearit. Remember, you can use code word blerd for 15% off at checkout. I don't know what you're waiting for. You should go contact them now. Look at all those pauses, man. See, here's the thing. I'm trying to work on being patient. I'm not a patient person. As you can probably tell, every time you listen to these episodes, you're like, Glenn, you're rushing through things. You're saying things very, very quickly. I'm trying to practice this patience because the kid is trying to wear it thin. I'm happy that I had him now that I'm older because I have more patience, but woohoo! And he's not doing anything crazy. He's just doing, minor things. He just comes up and he just wants to throw something at you, or he's trying to poke you. His favorite thing now is scissors. He likes to, they're plastic scissors, but he still pretends like he's cutting you. So I'm trying to be patient and be like, now, Morgan, please don't cut me. Anyway, on to our guest. Our guest today is Phil Mike. He's a Washington, D.C. based comic who's performed at many of the top stages in the region. He entertains a wide array of audiences with his relatable, honest takes on life, and he's open for Aling Mitra, Andy Haynes, and Hans Kim. What? He's hosted for the illustrious Hans Kim, among many others. We've been on stages together. His intro is short and sweet, but he is not. He is tall, dark, and handsome. Please welcome to the stage a good friend of mine, Mr. Phil Mike. What's happening, Phil?
Hey, what's going on? I've never been introduced that way before, but I like hearing it.
Is that right? Yeah, dude. You
Yeah,
know what? I only say it because it's true.
that's
You're a
right.
tall drink of water, Phil.
I appreciate that. Thanks for having me.
What's going on, dude? You're a new parent like myself. You're one of these pandemic parents, right?
Fairly close to it. It's actually we had him last year, and tonight, on the night that we're recording this, is a his first birthday.
Are you serious?
Yep.
Yo, listen, this is our 60th episode, so it's another milestone, and it's his first birthday. That's wild. I'm happy that you decided to do it today because we've been trying to coordinate or whatever. Just so that this falls on a perfect time. How did you guys celebrate?
Yeah, so we just went, we picked him up early from daycare, and then we got dinner. And it was just basically me and my wife just like eating as much food as possible while he just sort of sits there bobbing his head and stuff like that. I will say this, he had as much food I think as he's ever had. He had brisket, um, chicken, refried beans, and like we just gave him everything because now he's like really able to take it all down. So
Yeah,
um, hopefully he sleeps well, but he had a pretty fun day with all that.
nice. So he's onto the solid foods then.
Yeah, they say like what was it like bef- anything before one is fun or something like that, but he's really starting to transition into the solids where I think he prefers that over like the formula and milk and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's probably like a relief for your wife, right? Like being able to eat like just eat what you eat. Like I know for us the whole feeding process, it was strenuous. It was a struggle. It was stressful. For her, for me, I was just like I was like, we had a thing. I was like, okay, you can handle all the feedings, and I'll just take every diaper, any diaper, no matter how like whatever. I got all diapers because feeding was so like tough for her because she was like breastfeeding and doing the whole thing. And as a man, when you're watching like what women go through in terms of feeding, it's like, oh wow, that's that's a lot. That's crazy.
Yeah, there's no greater chasm between the roles than that. I mean, I felt so bad for my wife having to feed him as much as she did, and also she did pump like a lot of pumping
Mm,
because she wanted to, and I was in agreement. I mean, we didn't have like huge beliefs on it. It's just more or less just like we wanted milk for like as much as sort of we could
right,
without
right.
forcing it. But I understand why people just do like straight to formula or something like that too, because yeah, I mean, there's nothing I can do. That stuff is coming from two places only,
Yeah, right.
that one and the other one. And so um yeah, it was just pretty tough. I mean, she got through it, and I think she's happy that she did. But yeah, being off of that is the best thing ever.
Yeah, like when we were going through it, pretty much I was just like, listen, what like I was just like, I'll buy you whatever whatever things you need to go with this. I just would buy like she would be going through it or whatever and be like, oh, this part is so tough. And I'll just buy you this thing. Okay, I'll just buy you this electric, I'll get you this wireless thing, I'll get you this little nozzle. Like I just was like, I was just like trying to throw money at the situation, like whatever I could do, you know.
Yeah, we had all the different pumps. We had squeeze pump. I mean, the thing is, for a while, the most useful one was just like one of those squeeze pumps or whatever. And
Yeah.
that, dude, you can't be texting during it. Like, there's ways I could rationalize it and just be like, no, it's not too bad. I mean, look, at least like like, hey, I'm gonna pump for 20 minutes. I got nothing I'm gonna do. You take care of it. I'm gonna at least listen to music. Like it's one way to, but at the same time, if you got to do that like 6 to 8 times a day,
Yeah.
it's just not a thing.
Were you like surprised at how uh I guess how primitive like our pumping techniques are like really the technology, oh excuse me, the technology has not increased or been like improved like through all. I thought there was going to be something like, some fancy little thing. Like there's literally like maybe one company that has like a wireless like pump or whatever, but pretty much it's like old school technology is still like reign supreme.
Yeah, we had the EV, I think, for a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
And that worked until like it didn't, but then she figured out how to make it work, but that was like later in the game. And we had a lactation consultant come in because
Oh
like it was
yeah.
like part of our thing. And like I was shocked, kind of like what you were saying, like how primitive it was. I mean, there are times where they're literally like, all right, well, we'll just take like a straw and we'll like, put it into his mouth so he's getting stuff, but he's not actually getting it. I'm like, that's what I would do if I was doing this.
Yeah.
Like, wasn't, I mean, she's a very like qualified professional, 100%. But yeah, it is sort of like
It is
throw
kind
some
of
stuff out
it's kind
there.
of where they come in and it's almost like they're MacGyver. They're just looking around like, what do you got
Yeah.
here? Like okay, well, we'll take these glasses and maybe like this little tube here and then figure out how to get it. Like you would think they come in like, oh, you're just supposed to lift her up like 45 degrees and twist her nipple and that, but they none of that. It's just like, I don't know, what do we got here? Squeeze it, put a rubber band on it.
Yeah, well, and yeah, exactly. And then also, like on the baby side of things, you also think that the baby is trying to live. You're like, why can't you suck? Like, what the hell's happening?
It's
I'm
like,
like, what would have happened if this was 80 years ago? I understand there's like wet nurses and like different types of things or whatever. But
yeah.
I'm like, dude, this baby would be 6 pounds forever if he was left to his own devices.
Yeah, it's surprising how little they do to help their situation. You just look at the baby like you're part of the problem too. Like I don't know
Yeah.
what you're smiling at, but I've thought about that. How like human babies, like this is how hard life is for humans. If we don't have somebody else do things for us, we die. Like other animals, like deer or whatever, like the mom could like it could fall out and then the mom could die and maybe it could run off and maybe have hide or whatever and stuff and survive or whatever and tadpoles or whatever, frog, whatever. like we're like the only species I feel like where we have to have somebody else do something for us to like survive. Like the baby comes out, it cannot move. You know what I mean? Like if it just lays there, it doesn't crawl around or do much. Although I will say this, when the baby comes out, it does like kind of crawl up to the nipple. That was something that was surprising too. It's just not, just kind of, it doesn't just kind of flop there. It can like crawl up and like get to the nipple, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, there's definitely some like deep brain like triggers that just sort of like start firing. But I think about this a lot because I work from home, and I also sometimes think if I had a heart attack, how long would it take for someone to notice? Like it would be like 8 hours, and like if I didn't have a meeting that day and like my wife didn't text me, like no one would know. But like I've thought about it, like my schedule's basically my wife goes to work at 7:30, I'm with him until 9, then I drop him off and then I pick him up right around 4. And so my wife gets home maybe 4:30 or 5. But like there's a span, like if anything were to happen to me, not that it would, but like if I just dropped dead, it would be more dangerous. I don't know what would happen to him because he wants to crawl on stuff at this point, and then he'd fall down the steps, and then it would be 2 people who need help. It would almost be better if I like dropped dead outside, so at least someone could witness it. But I think this is probably this crazy shit stuff that you think when you're a parent. You're like, what happens if I die?
Is this something that you've been thinking about frequently? Like if you just drop dead, it's like,
oh yeah.
It's why it's funny? It's because literally today I was thinking the same thing. If I had a heart attack, like how would he be able to like get around? I'm thinking to myself, have I given him enough time with the phone to figure out how to call mommy, or just to an errant call to somebody, or does he? Because his existence right now is just sweet. Everything is fine. Everything's handed to him. He asked for food. And so I'm just like, what would he do if he was just left to his own devices? Would he figure out how to get food on his own, or eat on his own, or get water on his own, or would he just like lay there and perish? I think now he's a little older. He's 2, so he seems like he'd be self-sufficient at least until help came. He'd probably be just crying really loud. People would hear him, and then he might even open the door at this point. I don't know, but dude, that's tough. That's a
Well, and also you don't want to like teach your kid like, hey, if you sense trouble, I mean, like you want them to be able to like naturally sense it, but it's like, hey, if I don't move for like a minute, maybe you should like call the cops. Like that kid's like going to be scarred thinking his dad's always going to die or something like that. So
well, I'm black, so I wouldn't tell him to do that. That wouldn't. I'm not. I'm not like, oh, the cops. No, it would be a little bit more. I would be a little bit more fearful of it. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be, but I do want to give him like the tools to help himself out. But in doing so, then when I don't want him to help himself out, he'll like if I teach him how to go outside, then he'll just figure out how to go outside. And whenever he wants to go outside, now he's going outside. Or if I teach him to go into the refrigerator and get his own, then he's just always going to be doing that. But it's a tightrope to walk between teaching them to be self-sufficient and then giving them too much leeway so that he can do things and wreck the kitchen or run outside when I don't know he's there. It's really hard thing. Parenting is hard.
Yeah, like you have to like think ahead and also like know like the balance between what they think of you. Like I have practiced like my no voice. And I've learned this like a long time ago. Like somebody told me this, and I used to think like, oh, maybe they're just being like stern for no reason. But this is like a little bit of a difference between me and my wife, where like I'll see he's starting to get mobile now, and he'll like mess with a plant or something, or like try to like mess with electronics. And I'll say like, Frankie, I'm like, no. And I try to add a little bass. I'm not trying to like freak out. I don't care about that. But I'm just trying to be like direct, simple, and he knows I'm serious. And generally he stops because he knows that there's something happening. My wife will just be like, no, 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 no. And I'm like, I think he thinks that's funny. Like, I don't think he knows that that's the line. I don't know if he listens to that. I don't really think about it. I'm just like, I want to say it once without being like the grumpy parent.
Yeah.
Um, but I think he kind of understands it. I don't want to make it fun that I'm saying no,
Hmm.
but I swear I'm trusting him not to put a fork in the outlet.
Oh,
Like I don't,
yeah.
that type of stuff.
Biggest worry. I got all the little covers for that. Here's what I like to do. I don't like to repeat myself or kind of over and over reprimand them. And I feel like a lot of times, my wife is with them all the time, so she's always like, "No, no, this, no, no, that." And I think it just is like another thing that he's hearing, so he's not registering it. But I will not say anything to him. He's just running around doing whatever, even things that I don't want him to do. Like I'm just letting him run around, and then he gets to a certain point, and then it's just like real hard, like you said, basing your voice hard and aggressive. Hey, no, and
Mhm.
then he just like freezes. So now, for out, if I get that voice, I've noticed he's like he'll just like it just kind of like resets him or charges him up where he's like and then he's like listening to what I'm saying, so it's kind of calculated. I feel like sometimes my wife might think that I'm just letting him run free and just go wild, but I'm like, no, I'm kind of calculating when I interject because I want him to really listen, and if he's not doing anything that I deem is imminently dangerous, then I'm just like, and I'll come over to him and be like, hey, don't do that or whatever. But when I want the no to land, it's like it just goes from 0 to 100, like no.
Right. Yeah, I think that might be a male thing. It's just like less is more. And you also don't want to be the guy who like over manipulates the kid to be like always telling him that you need to stay within the lines because he's not doing anything, that wrong. I actually think about, Haywood.
Yeah.
Um, he has this hashtag that he would always, and I think he still uses it. It says like know the ledge. And
Yeah.
I think he generally talks about it with like racism, but I think it applies to like, I think it also applies it to parenting too, where it's just like know the ledge. Like if they're
Right.
getting close, but you don't think they're going to go over, don't reprimand them. But if they're actually going to do it, maybe that's the time so that they can explore and they can find the limit. And
Right.
if they back off before you say no, you won that battle. You
Yeah.
know,
And I make sure to, when they do recognize it themselves, say good job. Like that's a good job. Yeah. And like
Mhm.
positive reinforcement. So they're like, okay, that was the limit. I'm not supposed to go over. And he told me good job. It's like positive reinforcement for it. I feel like it's really difficult to not over parent. And I feel like that happens so often nowadays. People like kind of over parent, and you get it, you sense it in adults when they're older that they've been over parented because they just have this thing about them where they just like don't understand like limits and all the different things that come from being over parented. And I just want to make sure that I don't instill that in him, but also that he knows that, listen, daddy means business. It's not like just do what you want. It's like do what you want within limits, but you can find those limits. But just know once you find those limits, dad's going to be like, hey,
Yeah,
tighten
right.
up.
Yeah, it's funny how like you can repeat things of your own like childhood or something like that, And then also it's just more economical. Like you can't expend that much energy for a kid who's bouncing around for 30 minutes in a row. Like if you say no once in 30 minutes, that's better than saying no e- every 2 minutes. Like
Yeah.
you mentally it's taxing and
It's taxing on
you know
everybody. And I think the kid just tunes you out at that point. Are these kind of things that you've learned from being stay at home?
I think I've learned it from being lazy and like I'm like I don't want like I've tried to understand what I think. I think that's a big thing. And my dad would he would work at night and he would also work during the day some. And he was always a little bit aloof, but I always wonder if too like it just wasn't worth like stepping in. And I think it's just a little bit of that and like energy conservation. Like
Right.
I can't afford And I actually always thought that meant like, oh, you're a lazy parent or something. But there's a difference between like a kid running through the aisles and knocking everything over, and you're just
Right.
like, whatever, versus like, watching this baby
Right.
test out what's happening.
Wait, can I? So when we're in the store, sometimes I do let him run around, but and I want him to run
Mhm.
around, but to make it seem like I'm not just letting him run free, I kind of do like a fake jog after him, like oh, he just got away from me.
Yeah.
But really,
Yeah.
I want him to run around and like run around to get all the energy off or whatever. But I don't want him to, knock stuff off the shelf. But I do want him to run around. But then I do a fake like, I just couldn't hold him.
Right.
Not a fake. It's not a fake. Like sometimes he is really fast and he does like just get away from me or whatever. But I do want him to like run around. But then when I see people, I'll be like, oh yeah, I was chasing him. I swear.
Well, like that like gives him this like false sense in a good way, like this false sense of power, like, oh, I got something, but you're the one still in control. Like
Hmm.
you let him feel like he got away when
Yeah.
really like what's going on.
Right. And I'm like, yeah, I'm letting him explore and find the limits or whatever, and it's like a little fun game. It gets his like adrenaline going up or whatever.
Mhm.
And I swear, when we go to the store and then like we get back home, a lot of times he's like that takes that energy. He's ready for like a nap. Oh, so you haven't even gotten to you have. Oh man, you're in for it. Not in for it in a bad way, but I just can't wait for you to experience the wonders of like being two. And once they like kind of come into their own agency, when they start talking back to you and having like a mind of their own and saying things and like running around, oh man, it is it is a lot. And I think it'll also surprise you. Have you gotten words yet?
Maybe a smattering. It's kind of hard to tell. He kind of says things based on proximity at times, but it's hard to say if he knows he's saying that, but that's going to come soon, and he's like pulling himself up and like walking with assistance.
Hmm.
So that realm is going to be open real fast.
It's fun, and then they start learning things, and then they start saying things and uh and doing things. But the part where they start running around and you got to be fast to like catch them is, I don't know. And there's something about boys too. I feel like boys they're just like very destructive and like mischievous kind of, and it's like wild. And you turn around, they're like jumping off something. You're like, why are you jumping off something? Like what are you trying to do? Like they have no sense of like self-preservation to some degree. I've had friends who have like daughters and they
Yeah.
say the daughters aren't like that, but the boys are just like, yeah, let's jump off. Like like I swear he gravitates to the most dangerous thing in the room at when he was like one or so. So no matter what, there could be like a cup of water, a knife, some glasses, and he always goes for the knife. But if it's like a cup of water, a knife, and a harpoon, he's like, oh, let me go for the harpoon. Like no matter what the most dangerous thing is, he just goes towards that dangerous thing. Not that we have harpoons laying around, but you understand what I'm saying. Dude,
Yeah,
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, there's this well, a couple weeks ago I went to the museum with like a friend who has a 2.5-year old. And I've appreciated that, like, just because a kid is the way they are doesn't mean the parent is that way. Like
Hmm.
this kid has like no survival skills, kind of like what you said. He would just silently walk away forever if he could, you know. And these parents they're high quality parents. They're protective, but they understand like whatever. And they're like, this kid would just walk into the middle of the road if he could. Like, he just does not get it, you know? And it makes me a little nervous because I like being on my phone, like
Right.
I'll be, huh? And then 2 minutes later, poof. So I actually don't know how you keep track, but I guess there's just a rhythm of like, hey, I'm looking in the grocery aisle, but every 30 seconds I look, just
Yeah,
to
it
make
is.
sure.
It definitely is like a rhythm, and I try. You know what though? I feel like if I'm out and about, I'm acutely aware of like where he is and what he's doing, and I'm always trying to like make sure that I'm holding his hand or he's in eyesight, and don't let him wander off too far. And I'm not on my phone like hardly ever if we're out and about, because I'm like, that's where dangerous. If we're at home though, I'm always like doing something, which is interesting because once they start talking, he starts saying things to you. And so one thing that my son says to me all the time is, "Daddy, what doing? What doing?" And so he's like, "What are you doing?" And it's funny because when I'm on my phone, it is like almost like a trigger, like a key for me to say, "Oh, what am I doing? Why am I scrolling Twitter when like this little dude here is doing like whatever kind of cool thing he's doing or whatever." I don't know. I have this image in my head of like, we keep talking about, oh, we had a heart attack and like drop dead or whatever. And imagine like that happens and they say, "You know what, you're dead, but you get to run back through your life and all the cool moments you get to like relive." And I just keep thinking of like my son doing something cool, but I have to relive the moment as like just looking at my phone and not actually getting to see the cool thing that he's doing. And I'm like, yo, that would suck if like that is like I get to replay all these moments in my life, and what I'm looking at is some stupid video on like Twitter or what or TikTok, and like he's doing like some cool thing trying to get my attention. So that's one. And then another one is like if when I'm on my phone and I like look over and he's just like staring at me and I'm just like, I've just neglected you. He's just like imprinted that. So yeah, it's the rhythm thing, and then trying to be aware of like this little dude like needs my attention and he's going to follow what I do. Honestly, I'll say this, and I feel like I've been talking for a minute, but I feel like maybe early on I might have been on my phone more than I would have liked to have been, and I feel like he sometimes does not initiate eye contact with me because of that. Like I wasn't looking at him, so now he like feels like, oh, we don't look at each other. Like that's not a thing that we do. Daddy's looking over here. All right, cool. I always look over here. I don't know if that's just me thinking about it, but it that also makes me like aware of like, all right, get off the phone and like pay attention to him. Like, you know what I mean? Like make sure he's not doing something crazy.
Yeah, I've definitely thought about that because he's getting to the point where like he likes any screen, obviously, anything that emits light, like I get. I mean, I remember when he was just born, a couple weeks old, a couple months old. My mom is a Greek immigrant. She came over here because it was luxury goods over here.
Yeah.
And she would pick him up and she would hold him in front of our TV. And obviously, like, it doesn't matter at that point. He's seeing light and colors. He's enamored by a lamp.
Yeah.
And then it made me like realize that like, for one, he likes any light. And then for two, it is a little bit of how we perceive it. Like my mom views this as like a win because like
Mhm.
she didn't have these things growing up. And so she's like, the TV is good. Not like you watch it all the time, but
Mhm.
like, don't be afraid of it. And then these things, for me, I think we project our fear, right? We
Mhm.
project our fear of how we use it, and it is an issue. And I'm trying to figure out like how best way to have it with me. Like I try to have it with me as like a tool, so I will like play music from it, or I'll have like
Mm.
a podcast, something that shows that there's utility.
Mhm.
Um, and on top of that, I try and I do this. I can pick up my phone 3 times in a minute and not realize it.
Right.
That's like how people do it. But what I try not to do is look at it for a minute straight while he's in the room. So I do this little lie where I'm like, I look at it, I'm like, okay, cool, cool. Okay. Anyway, yep. And so
Yeah, going
it's
back to
tough.
it.
It's
Yeah, it's
tough.
hard. It's hard also because, and this is what I am telling myself, like we're comedians, so part of what we do is like through social media. I'll be honest, if I wasn't a comedian, I don't know that I would be on social media all that much. Like I wouldn't be posting a lot of things. I wouldn't be sharing a lot of things. I feel like social media is like a tool for what you want to put out into the world. And what I'm trying to put out into the world is like comedy content and this type of stuff. I'm not really trying to put like personal life out into the world. And because of that, I probably wouldn't be on it as much. But being a comedian does make it a little bit more difficult. Have you run into any I don't know, just comedy things with like your son or whatever, or have you taken him to any like shows or thought about like what your material was before and what it is now, and like how you don't want him to cross over or whatever? How's comedy affected fatherhood?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have like 9 good minutes that I would take anywhere. I have like 15 plus of like other things that I've said, and like maybe even, maybe a couple more, whatever. But I think it's a differentiator. I mean, like, we're both like young enough where like we get it, and we're also able to be parents. So like, you actually have a unique style about yourself because you actually can make a joke. For me, I don't try to alienate anybody with my comedy. Meaning, like, if you don't have a kid, I don't want this joke to be difficult to understand.
Right.
Like, I want to make a joke about like rectal thermometers, but in a way that you can understand. Um, you know, if crying on a plane, sure, but I'm making it about how crappy our flight is because it's Frontier. Like, I'm trying to make it accessible, and I think that helps with getting booked. Um, just because it's a little bit different. I mean, you can only talk about dating so much.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's like we're talking about what happens after you date.
yeah,
Which I feel
yeah,
like DC audiences are really funny because half the time they're on a date or they're single and they're out there and they don't really want to hear about kids because it's like, that's going to prevent us from like having sex. Nobody wants to
yeah,
think about that when they're out on yo, chill, bro. Don't talk about that. We're not trying to talk about the other side of it. But it is kind of the result of like everything that they're doing. Like, hey, all this trying to get a job and doing it. Why are you doing that? So you can have a family. This is where you're going to be in a couple of years or whatever. You should get used to it. I like to say that to the audience. It's like, hey, this is like you're trying to avoid it, but this is where you're going to end up. You know what I mean? That you're going to have a beer gut or me like a K gut, and you're going to have
yeah.
to chase a toddler around with it.
Yeah, no, we're all in the same spectrum. We're just on a different part of it, and we're all the same. Like, you know, I'm not that much different than the guy who's like been dating for X amount of years and like whatever. I mean, I was that guy, like,
Right.
I get it. And
Yeah.
then you have a kid.
Has it been hard for you? Because so I had a lot of jokes that were talking about dating or single life and whatnot, and then got married and have a kid. And now I still want to do those jokes, but it's like I'm not coming from the same place. And sometimes it's like I think the thing that suffers most is the setup in those jokes. Because I'm like, oh, I got to reset up this joke or figure out how to frame it because now I'm married, or like, oh, when I used to date, which I feel like it's like a degree removed from, oh, I'm in the scene and this is how it is.
Yeah, it is. I agree. It's a little tricky. And I had a joke where I got broken up with that I had for the first couple years I did comedy. And I tried to bring it back with some success, because like the root of the joke is funny, but I try to relate to it in a different way. Be like, listen, I know how hard it's dating. Breaking up is the worst feeling in the world. Like, it's almost like I'm glad I don't have to deal with that, but I
Yeah,
still get it.
right.
Um, but there is a fear of just like not relating or feeling like, oh, well, that used to happen, but not anymore because I got all this now. But, you know, at the same time, they look at you and they're like, dude, this freaking old guy with a kid, like, what a bum, like, I
Yeah,
get anyone I want. So it's like no one's ahead of anyone else, depending on how
yeah,
you look at it.
yeah. It's man. The other day somebody said something about uh CDs and how they're obsolete, and I was like what? Or
Yeah.
CDs or DVDs, and I'm just like, what? That was just a few years ago. That was my heyday, and now it's obsolete. It was only like 6 years ago, maybe. Like DVDs were still a thing, Blu-ray was still a thing, and now it's like totally not. You can't even find those players anymore. Everything's streaming, everything's online, everything's got to be digital, which is so crazy.
Yeah, well, that was like partly what my joke was about how we had to like we shared an Amazon Prime account. I don't know if people do that anymore. I assume that a lot of people who come to comedy shows now are like, between 25 and 35. For some reason, I just imagine they all work at Deloitte. Like, I don't know.
Do they
I
do?
just feel like they do. They all live in $3,000 apartments. Oh, maybe this one's 1,600. That's still insane to me,
Right.
Um, and I just imagine that because these apps have been around for so long that they've just had their own account or they have their own way to get to it. They don't have to share it with their boyfriend or girlfriend anymore. And I don't know if that's true anymore. Like, I don't even know if that's true, but that was the crux of my joke, was that I got an email from Amazon saying I was removed from her Prime
Oh
account.
man.
But I don't even know if that's even the case anymore. I have no idea.
I mean, with the economy, I'm pretty sure people are sharing
Yeah.
everything that they can share.
Yeah, I guess now that I say that, I'm like, yeah, why would you pay 90 or $115 if you could share it with
Yeah, you can
Steve?
share with someone that you hate, your ex,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
but how was getting married, dude? Because that's like a new-ish thing for you. How was all that for you?
Yeah, I mean, we got married right before the pandemic, and I had a lot of jokes about that, and that, like, I think in hindsight, I elevate it a little bit. Like, obviously, it's like extremely important and awesome and everything. So, like, nothing like that. But at the moment, like, it was very stressful. Like,
Mhm.
not the day itself per se, but like all that planning, like we were just like ready for it. We had a baller ass day. I have a joke about our wedding DJ playing the wrong version of the song Shout. Um, and and
We just play like the trap version, or
dude, he played Shout by Tears for Fears, like the old like
oh,
1983.
shout it all out.
Yeah, it was insane.
Is that your song now? Did you say, you know what,
Yeah.
that's got to be our song now?
Yeah, we got people to play it at weddings and stuff like that because it's like our thing now. But yeah, no, like in the moment we're like, this is awesome. And like we're married now. And I mean, we loved each other before. Like it all like seems seamless into transitioning into being married. So I don't know if we understood all of it at the time. And we were together for like 5.5 years at that point. But now that we have a kid, I think it magnifies what our wedding day was, because now we have a third, but really the start of that third was the two coming together for marriage. So I think it maybe makes it more special in hindsight.
Yeah, man, congratulations, dude. We did a marriage during the pandemic, which was crazy because you couldn't have like people come out or uh even visit. So we did our thing via Zoom and whatnot. Which, looking back on it, it was probably less stressful to do it that way. Did you have to do a lot of coordinating and families and getting everything together? Like, did you guys have a big? Yeah, man, that is a stress. I don't know. Maybe it's cool to do it or whatever, but it just seems like it's a lot of added stress and a lot of added money. I don't know if you feel the same way, or were you like, yeah, that was totally worth it?
The only people that make the wedding harder are the relatives. I never had one issue with Emily over the wedding. Never had one issue. There was no problem. There was no card. There was no font. There was nothing that drove us away from each other. It was every family member who had an opinion or who at the last second had to make it all about them.
Yeah.
But that's like the beauty of it, I guess. And you know, it was special, and it was fun because I'll say this, on the day it happened, no one made us worry about a single thing. There were so many mini fires that people put out, and we never heard about it. And I appreciate that to this day.
That is super awesome. Like where people just take care of it but they worry you up until you get married, and then on the day of, they're like, don't bother them with it.
Yes. Yes.
That's super awesome. Yeah. So here at the podcast, we always like to ask the blurting question, which is, what do you like to nerd out about?
Yeah, it's sad for me to admit, because there's a lot of people who have a problem with this. It is fantasy football. I am obsessed with it, and only since a year ago have I been able to manage it and its impact on my life. Um, it's a thing that can always be changed. It can always be altered, and with how many different formats there are now, it is a 24/7 thing. And I try not to be annoying with it with other people. I try to be more like thoughtful about it, but I understand it's the bane of my existence.
So listen, I can go there. I had to quit fantasy football and pull away because I was way too engrossed. We had an office fantasy football, and after every week, I would, how ESPN does the power rankings? I would do power rankings for the teams in our fantasy football league and then write it all out or whatever. And they were like, you must have way too much time on your hands.
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that? And I was, I'm just picking out the holes of the team. And at one point I was like, I should stop doing this because I feel like I'm giving them a lot of information on how to like better their team and the things that are going, but also it was kind of cool because they would all be like, when are the rankings coming out, you know what I mean, to like see where the rankings are. So it was kind of cool to have that power, but I was very much engrossed in it, and I did it for many a year. And I think can I tell you my fantasy football horror story?
Yes.
So every year, I'm really into it, and I was pretty good at it. I would end up like third place, like just about every year. But one year I was in the championship, and I was about to win the championship, and it was the last game of the season. We were playing individual defensive players, and I'm winning. I'm going to win the game. There's only one game left. It was San Francisco at Atlanta, and the only player that the other team had left
Was
was
Julio?
Navarro Bowman. And the
Oh,
only way that they could beat me is if Navarro Bowman intercepted the ball and ran it back for a touchdown. Can I tell you that the very last play of the game, when I think it didn't even matter. It was a nothing play, right? Or whatever. Like San Francisco was about to win already, and like it didn't matter. It was just like padding the stats. But I think it was Matt Ryan threw an interception to Navarro Bowman, and he broke a tackle, ran it back for a touchdown, and I ended up, losing. And that would have been the year that, as a matter of fact, that might have been the year that I said, you know what, F this, I quit. I'm done, because I got so close, and it's like literally, I looked through the stats. If it was a fumble return for a touchdown, it wouldn't have been enough points. If it was any other player, it had to be him with the interception return for a touchdown. And then he did it. And I was like, you gotta effing be kidding me. You gotta effing be, like, he didn't even, I think it was the point where like the starters were mostly out of the game or something like that. And so he shouldn't have even been in the game. It was so annoying. Oh man, fantasy football has given me some great times. I love some fantasy football. I could go all about it. So, do you think the NFL is scripted? Is that a hill that you're standing on?
Dude, it feels like it, man. But it was scripted the way you had it in that fantasy game.
I'm like, is it specifically scripted against me? Like, what? That is way too intricate of a thing to happen.
Yeah, you almost wish you didn't know that was the way to lose, because then now it wouldn't have happened. You
Yeah,
know?
like if I wouldn't have been paying attention to the scores and I just came back like, oh, I lost, it would have been like whatever. But I had been looking, I'm like, oh damn, I'm about to win the championship. And I'm like, who's he got left? Oh, he's only got one linebacker left. Yes, awesome. I can do it. But it was like one linebacker. Here's the thing that made it so crazy. One linebacker, and they had to score like 17 points, which is the amount of points that like a running back or somebody was. I was like, oh, great. I win. This is a W. Unless he gets like 17 tackles and like some crazy stat line, I win. And that was the only way he could do it, was an interception return for a touchdown. And then he did it, and I lost. I think I threw a chair. I threw a chair, and then I said, you know what? I'm never playing. I'm not playing anymore. This is upsetting and ridiculous. Yeah, but so you think it may be a little scripted, or you're not sure. You're on the fence.
I just think we're a supercomputer. Like we have all seen enough football at this point where collectively, like, it's in the ether that we know the script already. I mean, we all know Patrick Mahomes was going to score a touchdown. Like, there was no way they weren't. We all knew, like, if you were looking at the Super Bowl and you're like, oh, the Chiefs are underdogs, well, they have Patrick Mahomes. And like they have Niners have Brock Purdy. How is this going to go? You just know, based on all the connections in your head and watching football, that this stuff is going to play out. And I guarantee you, if you never thought Navarro Bowman was going to score a touchdown, he wasn't going to. But then you put that out there in the universe, and then it got picked up, and then it got shut down on you.
Maybe, you know what? I'm trying to put out into the universe right now that I need a good, I don't know, $100,000-$200,000. Like, I'm trying to put that out there that's necessary to come into. So if you're listening, universe, I don't know if that's I don't know if that's the tone of the universe. I'm gonna research it, and I'm gonna try to hit the tone so that it could send me some. Send me some. Would you like anything while I'm ordering?
Yeah, I would like to know the price of Bitcoin in 5 years.
Listen, Bitcoin's at like over 50,000 now.
Mm-hmm.
Which is great. I mean, if that's another thing that you nerd out about, like that's actually pretty interesting too. As a matter of fact, I saw your podcast, Phil Mike Likes You.
Yeah.
Where you guys
I did a few episodes of that, and those were like long form interviews with people who I really like and who are experienced with what they're talking about. And this guy I interviewed is one of my good friends. He's killed it with all the crypto stuff for a very long time, and sort of a combining fantasy and Bitcoin. It was both my highest and lowest moment in fantasy. But there's leagues that I'm in where we buy Bitcoin at the beginning of the season, and then whatever the price is at the end of the season, like, that's what you get. And we did the pandemic year. We bought $1,000 or $1,200 worth of Bitcoin when it was worth $5,500 in March 2020 during the bottom of the pandemic, right at the start. And by the end of the year, it was worth $25,000-$30,000, and I was in the championship game. And so that $1,000, pot grew to be $6,000.
Oh, nice.
And I had Ryan Tannehill versus his Derrick Henry, and Ryan Tannehill scored 39 points and took 2 rushing touchdowns away from Derrick Henry. And I was elated to know that I had robbed somebody of that money. But it got so bad, Glenn, because there was nothing going on during the pandemic, just football. Like,
oh yeah.
And I couldn't talk to my wife on Sundays. I was just watching and looking at my computer, and like, we were doing a puzzle, and I'm like, Emily, I can't do this puzzle. Like, I am here physically, but mentally I am gone. Drew Brees and it was the Saints versus the Cardinals, and Kyler Murray kept putting up points. And I'm like, Emily, I have to put down my phone for 5 minutes, and that'll be a victory for me. And she's like, you have a problem. And I'm like, I do. So
like, I do. Yeah, I 100% do, but it's not going to solve itself today. So
no.
Let me go and figure. Do you have a team? Oh, no.
I didn't. Okay, I'll say this. Are you a Dallas guy or?
No, I'm a Philly. I'm a Philly fan. I'm an
Oh,
Eagles.
well.
You don't see the Eagles ball and the Eagles back in the
Oh, yeah. Wow. I
yeah.
had blocked it out. No, I'll say this. This shirt I got from my wife got me for Christmas. The commander's name is terrible. And I'll say this. My hope is that in 2 years okay, yeah, you can start laughing now. My hope is in 2 years we will be in the NFC Championship game, and the older teams, perhaps such as the Eagles, the Niners, will have kind of fallen enough to allow for a new team to break through. But I've
Bite
also
your
been
tongue.
yeah, well, I've been eating S for the last 25 years as a former Dan Snyder, subservient. So
Mm.
I
Are
can
you
only
happy?
hope.
Are you happy about the sell?
Oh, it was the greatest day in franchise history for 30 years.
Do you remember where you were when you heard the news?
Well, there were like 6 different times the news came out. Obviously, I was like at work on my phone, and it felt like Christmas. Um, it was like the witch is dead. The witch is dead.
Right.
This guy, Dan Snyder's like in his 50s. He could have owned the team for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
I would have been 65 years old. I would have been closer to death than, many people. I could have not seen us. I mean, I don't know if we'll see a Super Bowl, but now we have a chance, and that is everything.
Here's the thing that's crazy to me is there are people who their team will never see a Super Bowl. Like they're just going to live their life and never see the
Yeah.
thing. And I thought I was going to be one of those because a long time, but the Eagles just kept striking, and finally, in the most like odd year to win it, 2017, with a backup quarterback, to have a Cinderella ending like that, and to beat Tom Brady. Not when Tom Brady had a bad game, when Tom Brady had like the best game that he's had in a Super Bowl, like throwing for 500 yards and still win. Oh
Yeah.
man, that I was like, now you know what it did? It relieved me of stressing about football. Like, because that was when I was in my whole, doing fantasy football, playing, watching all the time. And then after they won, it was like a weight was lifted. I was like, I don't have to suffer anymore. Like I can be released into the world and like feel free. Like I hadn't missed a game up until then, and then like after 2017, I was like, you know what? I can miss games. It's okay. Like things are gonna be all right. It just relieved me. It just left a. It just left. Are you gonna raise your son as a Commanders fan, or are you gonna let him be free?
If he's going to be like me at all, he has to be suffering through every Sunday, but I hope so. I mean, if he like truly has an inkling for another team, I would, I guess I would say sure, but I think it would have to be like he likes CJ Stroud or something, like there's no physical connection to another franchise we have. He would have to like a player or something like that. But I'm hoping to bring him to games and watch and, throw the football around and talk about heroes and stuff like that.
Nice.
But, he's not going to see winning. I'm kind of resigned to that. I know I said the whole NFC Championship thing, but I only said NFC Championship, and I didn't even say win it. So
Yeah.
I'm just saying maybe we get to the playoffs the year after this.
But the Commanders might have a chance with new ownership, new blood, listen, I used to live out that way, so I used to play basketball with some of the players or whatever. And one thing that, like, to a man, kind of all of them, the sentiment that I got was, you don't go to Washington to try to win games. You go to get your paycheck. So because of that, no, you're not. There's not going to be any winning or whatever. I also had a joke that I was doing because I think somebody asked me like, "Oh, are you going to let your son choose their own team, or you're going to let them have their own allegiance?" I was like, absolutely not, because they might choose the wrong one.
Yeah.
And I was like, they can choose their gender, they can choose their pronoun, but I'll be damned if they choose their team.
Yeah, if they choose the Cowboys, they might as well be dead to me. So
Yeah, exactly. I'm disowning them.
But you guys have a good franchise, and you guys pick off good players from other teams. You guys have a franchise quarterback. I don't know if you think that, but like if you have good ownership and like good top down, you at
Yeah.
least have a chance. I mean, you've been
Yeah.
to 3 Super Bowls in 20 years. That's with 3 different quarterbacks. That's incredible.
Yeah. So I'm excited, hopefully, for next year. I do not know what happened at the end of this year. That was a monumental failure. And I just I've never seen a team unravel and go from possibly, arguably best team in the league to almost possibly, arguably worst team in the league in the course of one season. That
Yeah.
was insane to see.
And for like emotional reasons. Like there were injuries to the secondary for sure, but like they just seemed like worn out or something.
Yeah. It just all of a sudden they just just everything. And then their body language all sucked. And then it's like they couldn't make a tackle, can't complete a
Yeah.
pass. It's like what happened? We beat like every just about like I don't know, a third of the playoff teams we beat in the
Yeah.
regular season. And then all of a sudden it's like they can't even beat the Giants or the Cardinals, and they're losing to like the Seahawks. It just I don't know. Whatever. All right. Now I'm angry. Now I got to go to
Yeah.
go to bed angry. Yeah, we've been talking for a minute. Please tell the people what you got. Oh wait, I didn't even ask you about your comedy stuff. What's going on with comedy? Is comedy going well for you? How's it going?
Yeah, it's going well. I performed at all 4 of the clubs basically in the last month, which is exciting. And yeah, I mean, is this coming out like now? Is this live or like is this
No,
coming
no,
out
it's coming out on Friday, the 16th, a couple days after
tomorrow?
Valentine's Day.
Okay, yeah. I mean, well, I'm gonna be at the Comedy Loft on the 16th, with featuring for Martin Phillips, who's back in town at Cellar
Oh,
Door on the 18th, and just picking up as many spots as I can. It's been a pretty fun year so far. Worked with Hans Kim a couple weeks back, and just trying to grow the portfolio really and expand to some new stuff. So
yeah, man.
yeah, it's been cool.
I hope nothing but the best for you. Yeah, comedy's been dope. As you can see, here's my little practice mic right here.
Yeah.
This is where I tell my jokes to a screen.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been doing good. I hope to see you around town. Hey, how's Hans Kim? Is he cool? Do you like him? Is he cool people?
Yeah, he was a cool dude, and he I mean, he did 4 basically sold out shows at the Draft House, and you know, he did a great job, and he was really cool dude to hang out with, and hope to see him around if I ever go down to Austin and stuff. So yeah, pretty cool dude.
Yeah, tell him Glenn said hello. He doesn't remember me. But I brought him up one time at like an open mic. When he was still living in his van. He like came through here,
Yeah.
and I brought him up at one of the mics. Like, yeah, welcome Hans Kim. He doesn't remember me, but whenever they get big, they never remember the little people.
Yeah, no, I know. I hope I left a mark, but he's just got off of a plane from Vancouver just to do the show that I was on and stuff like that. But
Sure.
I'm sure he'll remember you.
Yeah,
I'll
right.
just Glenn, about that tall, and
Yeah. With the
said
fro
give it up.
lost to Navarro Bowman and his
Yeah,
fantasy.
yeah, exactly. Claim to fame.
I think I should name this episode "Fucking Navarro Bowman."
Yeah, and just at him, and he'll be like,
Like what?
why? And he's like,
Like
oh,
you
one of
ruined my
these.
fantasy football championship, bro,
Yeah.
for some vanity points.
Right. Yeah, that's that deep cut stuff too, because he's like, I didn't even know I was on fantasy. Like, I thought that was just a wide receiver thing.
Yeah, that was before I think it was big or whatever too. Like nowadays, everybody knows like, oh, you score points for my team. I think in that
Yeah.
era, I think that was like 2015 or 16 or something. Like people weren't even that hype into it as much. Anyway, we have run the gamut. We've talked about so much. Tell the people where they can find you, where they can follow you, where they can get updated on shows that you're doing or anything that you got going on in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, everything about me is at Phil George Mike on Instagram. That's
Okay.
it, right there.
Boom. All right. I saw you had a TikTok too. I don't know. You do not use that.
I have a TikTok that I'm gonna maybe start posting some new stuff on as well. And I'm on X too if you want to see like my rough shot ideas. Just anything that the first thing that comes to mind, boom, just goes out on there too. So it's all at Phil George Mike.
Nice, man. Well, thanks for hopping on here, man. We ran the gamut, talked about parenting, talked about these kids, keeping them safe, talked about fantasy football, of course. Comedy got thrown in there. I think we've run the gamut. I don't think there's anything left to say now except for blerd that out.